Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Ramadan FM special here on EAVA FM 102.5 FM, broadcasting throughout Leicester and online at www.ramadan.fm. You can also listen to us on the Facebook page and also on Twitter and on YouTube. My name's Sharmeenon and I'm the host today for today's program called Morning Matters. Today's show is going to be about halal travel, and I'm very fortunate to be joined by a couple of guests talking about halal travel, experts in this particular field. And we will be speaking to them via telephone. They're all over the country, so they've given their time to hopefully talk to us over the phone. And the producer's just going to line up our first call. And the first guest that I have on today's show is a brother called Abdul Malik Taylor, who is a convert to Islam, and he is the founder of Halal Tourism Britain. He is an entrepreneur, an influencer, and Britain's first professionally qualified Muslim tour guide. And he has featured on various other media outlets like the BBC, Thomson Reuters, Al Jazeera, Islam Channel, My Salam, Iqra International, Iman Channel. So he's no stranger to being featured on the media. And we have him online now, I think. Brother Abdul Malik, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Firstly, thank you very much for taking the time out to talk to us today.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to go straight into the interview. And I'm going to say, actually, when I first came across your tours, and I was speaking to one of the moms on the school run this morning about this show as well, and I said to myself, really, is there, I know you run Muslim history tours in London, and I thought to myself, well, Muslim history tours of London, that's a bit of a stretch, don't you think? How could you actually do a whole tour about Muslim history? And the other mom was like, what's that about? I've never come across it. So the first thing you're going to have to do is fill us in about your Muslim history tours, and just give us a bit of an inkling of what it is that you do.
We have a number of Muslim history tours, not only in London, but also in Brighton and Woking as well.
Wow.
But what we look at is some early connections, contributions that Muslims have made to Britain. And believe it or not, the earliest Muslim connection goes back to the 700s.
Oh,
and not many people know that. It's like that's over 1,300 years ago. That's when our heritage within Britain started. And it's just truly amazing when you consider how early that was and how far after the death of the Prophet Muhammad.
Absolutely.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
That is phenomenal. So there is sufficient history there.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, sometimes you can even find them, for example, like in top touristic locations like Trafalgar Square. There are some reliefs there at the bottom of Nelson's column, and one of them even makes mention of a battle that Admiral Nelson took part in, and it actually makes mention on the bottom of the relief. It states Nile. And, most people go to Trafalgar Square, take some pictures, selfies, etc., but they really read what the content is? And what was this Nile? I mean, this was the Battle of the Nile that took place 200 years ago. The Battle of the Nile was actually in Egypt.
SubhanAllah. Well, I think most people these days, and that's a generalization, I'll take that back, a good number of people are just about trying to get that Instagrammable photo selfie to go on their Instagram and just say that they've ticked it off in a way, and not looking. And it's one of these things. This is just like the social media generation, and actually I would have never have come across what you do if it wasn't for social media. So I can't knock it that much. Now and you mentioned also that it's not just about London; it's further afield.
Yeah, that's right. We also do tours in Woking. Woking has Britain's first purpose-built mosque, which is a Grade 1 listed building. So that's actually on par with Buckingham Palace as well.
Really?
And yeah, in terms of the actual status, Grade 1 status as well. When you look at what's available around Woking, you have even Brookwood Cemetery, and it has some of the earliest translators of the Quran buried there as well. It has some Ottoman soldiers who are buried there as well. And it also has an Islamic peace gardens in Woking as well. So there are a number of sites in Woking, but but we also have Brighton as well, and mostly, Brighton's like a southern coast place.
Well, Brighton's not really known for Muslim history or culture
Yes,
in
yeah.
that
But
way.
it
It's
does go
also known
back
for
as
other
well.
things, admittedly.
We had Mohammedan baths open up in Brighton as well about 200 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Who would imagine that?
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's just learned so much in a short period of time already. And one of the things, I'm just thinking about also what popped up, and I'm going off the interviews list of questions. Actually, I'm sorry, Abdul Malik, I'm going to throw one out there at you. I noticed one of the things that popped up on my Facebook feed was about a art gallery tour, and that you were running. And you don't think, when you're talking about going to the National Gallery, these museums in London, you don't really think about the Islamic history that's behind those paintings or those inventions and so forth. That was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Generally, if you think about museums and galleries, in terms of the usual audiences would be maybe white audiences, but when you actually look into the different portraits, art pieces as well, there are Muslim connections. So we have one in the National Portrait Gallery, and we were actually commissioned by Tate Britain to do one at their gallery for an Eid event that they held.
Wow.
And we actually broke the record for the most amount of attendees
Mashallah.
on a tour. So we did make history
fantastic,
there.
mashallah.
At the same time, whilst we carried out the research, it was the case that we actually made some contributions to the archives. So they themselves weren't fully aware of different paintings and their connections to perhaps different museums, different exhibitions that took place in the past, as well as interpretation as well. Something else that takes place in galleries.
That's fantastic. So, now, did you just wake up one day and decide to be a tour guide? How did that come about? I can't imagine. Mostly it's like you have to become a doctor or you have to become an alim or something like that. A tour guide is not one of those sort of career paths that anyone would ordinarily consider. How did that come about?
Well, I'm actually a professionally qualified tour guide. And
well, that's another thing entirely as well.
Yeah, and I was told I was the first Muslim in Britain, so I actually made history.
Wow.
But the journey started from my university days when I had an interest in Muslim heritage of Britain, and I looked at the early Muslim communities, which were Woking and Liverpool, and I kept reading and researching around those two communities, but then obviously I was coming across other references and other connections as well, so I was actually then inquiring about those, looking those bits and pieces up, and it was just that general interest, from 20 years ago. It's just built up, and then I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this knowledge? And I started initially doing some workshops about Tudors and Muslims, Victorians and Muslims, Vikings and Muslims, and like an ordinary timeline. But that's when I thought I could actually turn this into a walk, take a bit from here, a bit from there. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I actually recognized in terms of the publicity the Muslims were getting in the press, the media, and we wanted to portray a positive side of the Muslims contributing to Britain as well. So it was a kind of like a couple of reasons why it was actually initiated establishing Muslim History Tour. So we did like a first walk-in tour, and we had a fair amount of people, about 20. Al Jazeera TV even covered it as well, which was surprising. And we looked at some of the top touristic locations in London, like Trafalgar Square, Westminster Abbey, as well as Parliament, and we finished off at the National Portrait Gallery as well. And as time went by, we were getting inquiries from abroad, and that's when we thought it's just better to take it the tourism way. And that's what we did, and since that time we've actually established probably about 20 different types of tours, as well as walk-in tours. We have a black cab taxi tour, which is the elders actually prefer that because it's walk-in. So we've
a very traditional version of it. Well. Yeah. Well, every generation needs to be catered for. We kind
Oh
of,
yes, yes, yes.
you
I
know,
mean, since that time as well, we established a sightseeing tour bus as well. So we'll go around London for about 4 hours, City of London, Central London, looking at different locations and having running live commentary. And even people have said they've noticed that our commentary is actually non-stop, as opposed to like mainstream sightseeing tour buses. It's limited. And then only about a month ago, we started a nighttime bus tour as well.
yeah, I did notice that as well. It's on
Something
my
different.
list. I have to admit, there's
Yeah.
quite a few of your things, your tours, which are on my list when I finally come down to London, and have time. And the Red Bus tour is definitely one of those. It's like
Yeah.
the alternative Red Bus tour of
Absolutely. Yeah.
London, and
Yeah.
it's just
I mean, yeah.
fascinating. And it's just I'm glad the kids are not listening right now. But like, why haven't we gone on that tour, Mum?
But having said that, we also do tickets for the attractions. Sometimes people want us to join them on the London Eye and give them like a panoramic commentary over London as well. But then
Oh,
we also
wow.
have like cruises on the River Thames where we can actually deliver a tour as well. But currently we do actually have halal food packages on the River Thames as well, so you can have an afternoon tea or dinner or lunch
Oh,
if people
brilliant.
want it as well. So,
All
so
catered for.
we have branched out, yeah.
It's a fantastic thing, and it actually just reminds me. We're talking about halal tourism, and we bumped into each other first time, although we were Facebook friends, so to speak. I'd never met you in person, which I think is the case for a lot of people that you know on Facebook these days. And we met at the World Travel Market, which is a massive exhibition where companies come from all around the world to exhibit about the countries, hotels, and so forth. And there was a panel discussion there about halal tourism. And one of the things that was really sort of struck me was the growth of halal tourism that is projected to become worth $220 billion by 2020. It's just
That's
huge.
right, yes.
It's such a huge market. And how much do you think? I mean, this is just like your personal feeling on how much you think is going to be taken up by the UK, by people visiting the UK.
I mean, what people don't even realise is that UK is actually one of the top destinations for Muslims within the non-Organisation of Islamic countries. So except mostly like the non-Muslim majority
The Gulf
countries,
countries
it is
and
already
UAE and places
a
like this.
top destination, and at the moment we're actually in third place. So UK is attractive to the global Muslims.
I think we
And,
think about it from the opposite perspective. We think about going abroad, but actually a lot
yeah,
of people
absolutely.
do, and tourism is big business in the UK. It's one of the...
Yes, domestic tourism, domestic halal tourism, it's on the increase now. And what we've noticed as well, we have a lot of repeat customers. We have new inquiries. People want to join us, and they just said we've never heard about these experiences within Britain, and that's what people are enjoying with us. We provide them a choice of different activities and experiences that they could actually have.
And I think that's the thing is one of the things that sort of came to mind. I'm switching on to the next question, and I'll go back to the other question. I'm sorry, we're going a bit off the list because
Sure.
this conversation is really taking us in lots of different places. And one of the things was talking about Muslim heritage. And as a mum, as a parent, you often want to shine the light on Muslim heritage, what Muslims have contributed. And that's one of the reasons I was so drawn to what you do. And is this something that, one of the things that comes to mind is getting school kids on these red buses as part of a school trip? Is that something you're looking
that's
to do?
possible. Yeah. I mean, we do have school children, youth groups, homeschoolers as well, who come on our tours as well. So we're not just catering for the tourist, if you like. We also cater for the educational sector as well. So it could be a school who may want to book out the Central London tour, which is the most popular one, because that contains a lot more, some of the top touristic locations. And come October time, it could be we also have a Black Muslim tour as well.
Okay.
So school children want to come on that tour because it's Black History Month.
That is very
interesting. We also have a popular monthly homeschooling tour groups as well, where we rotate the different types of tours as well. And they absolutely love coming on it. I mean, they've said that they've never imagined to be in England so much Muslim heritage. I mean, generally when people think about Britain, they think it's a Judeo-Christian country. But even the reavers who actually come on the tours, they said, well, no, you have to include Islamic onto this as well. And that's what even like the born Muslims are starting to say as well. And I think sometimes when we've spoken to people, people have actually said we've never thought there could be Muslim heritage within Britain because of colonization. And that's like, our mindset's just framed around colonization. But even prior to colonization, there were Muslims in the country. Our heritage was here as well.
And that's an interesting thing to know. And I think that's one of the things that certainly talking to our kids about and talking to our children.
I mean, look, how many kids learn about King Henry VIII? And what do we know about him? How many wives he had, what he'd done to his wives, how fat he was,
okay,
etc., etc.
absolutely.
But how about the Muslim connections there? People don't even realize that he had even over 400 Turkish rugs. He had a Turkish bath.
Really?
He used to employ Muslims as well. I imagine that. Isn't that amazing?
No,
to
it is.
give that different perspective now.
Absolutely.
That Muslims themselves can actually relate to. But sometimes, I mean, the Muslims themselves, when you discuss history, they find it boring. And the reason why they find it boring is because they can't relate to it.
Yes. And I just wanted to just do a quick roundup. If you're just tuning into the show today, it is about halal tourism. I am joined by telephone, interviewing a brother called Abdul Malik Taylor, who is the founder of Halal Tourism Britain. If you do want to join the conversation, the number to text in on is 07450 925 084. That's 07450 925 084. You can also email into the studio on info@ramadan.fm. We're also streaming live on Facebook, so if you've got a question you want to ask, you're just interested to have a bit more information about any particular tour that Brother Abdul Malik and his team run, then please do drop us a comment on the Facebook as well. So, just a little recap. We have been talking about I'm going to say this, I don't know whether this is true, the hidden Muslim heritage of England that you're uncovering in your tours. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, you can say that. You can say that.
So, one of the other things I noticed is just not just about England. You seem to be branching out now. I noticed something about Ertugrul-inspired tours and something about Paris coming up on my newsfeed. Now, Ertugrul, for those, and I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, I'm very sorry. We went to Turkey recently, and one of the things I'm blown away by is that the language is phenomenal. It's just letters and sounds that could never ever wrap my tongue around. And Ertugrul, probably most of us pronounce it incorrectly. It's a program on Netflix. I'm not promoting Netflix. It's also available on other platforms as well. It's a program about the grandfather of the the founder of the Ottoman Empire. Is that correct, Abdul Malik?
The founder. The father of.
I'm very
Empire. That's right. Yeah.
Get myself confused sometimes with little details, which I shouldn't do. It's probably why I'm never going to be a tour guide, because I can't get the facts right.
Oh, don't worry. I mean, people make mistakes. It does happen. I mean, the most common one, to be honest, is when tourists come to London, they think London Bridge is actually Tower Bridge.
Oh, that's the classic one, isn't it? Yes.
It is. It is, to be honest. I think that's it becomes the case because the popular nursery rhyme.
Yes, absolutely.
That's been, yeah.
But that's something on the cards by the looks of things.
Yeah, I mean, we do have in Istanbul tour. We do cover it differently. We look at the British connections to do with the Ottomans and Istanbul, Turkey, and we cover it like that. So, for example, one part that would be covered would be about Florence Nightingale, who school children learn about her.
Absolutely.
The Crimean War, and she went to Istanbul. We managed to actually track down the location of where she was actually treating the injured soldiers as well. So that's on the list. She visited some Turkish baths. We managed to find those places as well. But then, of course, there were some gifts which were exchanged from the different Ottoman sultans and the royal families over here. So we managed to find a few of those locations as well. And even some early Muslim converts for example, the first Muslim in Parliament, that was in the 1860s, Lord Stanley. He was working in Istanbul for the British Embassy, so that would be another part that we would cover as well.
That's phenomenal.
So it does give a total different perspective.
Well, this is it. I mean, this is the thing. It's like this is this hidden or this forgotten heritage which is being rediscovered, and especially for our generation, next generation. I think it's so important.
I mean, it's quite strange as well. We actually get French Muslims who come on our tours, and they're looking forward even for our Paris one.
So do you do it in French as well?
We started the research for Paris as well. We do have a number of locations that we have identified as well. So one of them is, for example, when you had Abdul Qadir, who was actually imprisoned in Paris. And Abdul Qadir was a Algerian freedom fighter, but then he was actually imprisoned. But then he was also a person who released Christian captives, as well as he didn't want any bloodshed, etc. And he gets recognized internationally. And in America, we actually have villages named after him as well, places. No way. So that's truly amazing.
It's just profound, actually. It's things that I've never really thought about myself, and many people probably haven't thought about.
I mean, even the last Sultan, he died in Paris, but people don't know that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that is definitely. I mean, people say you learn something new every day. I think we've learned a lot of new things in this show so far, and hopefully the listeners have us appreciating it as well. So, just to say, how if people want to do one of your tours, how do they get in touch? Do you do tailor-made tours? What's the best way of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, we do tailor-made tours. If people want to find out information, you can just go directly to our website, halaltourismbritain.com. And we have all our different experiences mentioned on there, which could be attractions, it could be guided tours, the bus tours, as well as the cruises, as well as retreats as well. That's something new that we've started as well.
All right, okay, that would be very interesting to find out more about. So I just want to thank you for your time. And is there any other last words you wanted to share with our listeners?
I would say to the listeners, embrace your heritage where you live. We generally look at the time of the Seerah, the Sahaba, which I'm not dismissing. To be honest, we've started to look at Ottomans, been popularized by the TV series.
Absolutely.
Spain we may have visited as well. But how about the heritage of the Muslim heritage where you live? What do you know about it?
I think, Abdul Malik, we're going to have to get you to Leicester to do a Leicester tour. That's what we're going to have to do, because definitely going to have to get you up here to Leicester to do a tour around Leicester. We'll have to start organising that, inshallah. But that's fantastic, and I thank you so much for your time today, Abdul Malik.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for taking the time out. Jazakallah khair. That was Abdul Malik Taylor, who is the founder of Halal Tourism Britain. Abdul Malik is a convert to Islam, and he is also an entrepreneur, an influencer, and Britain's first professionally qualified Muslim tour guide. And it was wonderful to speak to him today. He has spoken on a lot bigger platforms like Al Jazeera and the BBC, Thomson Reuters, and so forth. He runs a website called halaltourismbritain.com, and as he was mentioning, he's done a lot around that hidden heritage, or the uncovered or forgotten heritage, Muslim heritage that exists here in Britain, and also now looking further afield abroad. After the break, we're going to be joined by Soumya Hamdi, who is a halal travel consultant and founder of the Halal Travel Guide. Inshallah, she will be joining us after the break and talking a bit about what she does with regards to the Halal Travel Guide, and be just going through why she set that up and what we can gain from the Halal Travel Guide, inshallah. And just to round up, if you're just tuning in, today's show is about halal travel. I mean, halal travel is a term that gets bandied around quite a bit these days. It seems to be the buzzword. It's also known as Muslim-friendly travel. It's also known as halal tourism. Lots of terms around that. And inshallah, towards the end of the show, I'm going to be talking more about halal travel and tayyib travel, which is something I'm quite keen to explore and if we get people to think about is traveling in a more ethical way, in a way which is more conscious about the environment and the world that we live in, and about how we pass that on to the next generation, how we pass on a positive attitude about traveling towards the next generation. If you don't go away, do stay on after the ads, inshallah. This is Sharmeen, your host for the Morning Matters show. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Morning Matters with myself, Sharmeen, on this Ramadan special on EAVA FM, broadcasting on 102.5 FM, also broadcasting online on www.ramadan.fm, on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. And if you want to join us in the conversation today, we are talking about halal travel. I've had a very interesting conversation before the break with Brother Abdul Malik Taylor from Halal Tourism Britain. And I'm going to be joined now by Sister Samia Hamdi just very soon. And just before we do that, I just want to give you the numbers again. If you want to text in or contact in to the studio with your questions, you can do that on the Facebook page. You can also do it via email at info@ramadan.fm. That's info@ramadan.fm. And also you can text in. Just let us know there's someone out there's listening. If you've got any questions or anything at all around travel and halal travel, the number is 07450 925 084. That's 07450 925 084. And just a quick point on that, if you do have your phone out, do take the time, store the number, so if you do tune into any shows, you can quickly just send a message. That would be brilliant. Now, Sami has joined us on air, is that right, Sami? Are you there?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam warahmatullah. Thank you very much for taking the time out to join us today.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
And just to remind listeners who've just tuned in, Samia is a halal travel consultant. She's the founder of the Halal Travel Guide, which is a London-based media project sharing Islamic heritage, strengthening Islamic identity through travel. Been to a number of countries and doing this: Bosnia, Barbados, Kazan, and just sharing the forgotten and unknown stories of positive Muslim contributions to humanity.
That's correct. Thank you.
I'm trying to get the words out this morning. So Samia Hamdi, just give us a little bit of an insight into what made you create the Halal Travel Guide.
So it started sort of as a travel blog back in 2015. My husband and I took our 4-month-old daughter with us and we went road tripping through Southeast Asia. So we started off in Singapore and then drove through Malaysia and then went on to Korea and Japan. And as a young mother at the time, I thought, wouldn't it be really helpful if there was one place where I could go online and have a look and find reputable places to enjoy good quality local halal food, where I can meet Muslims and Muslims and feel welcomed, and where I should stay and that sort of thing. So I decided to do that myself. I saw there was a gap and I thought, why not provide that service? It hasn't happened yet, but why not document my travels? And so I did that, and then it grew from there. I didn't want it to be a personal travel blog. I wanted it to be more than that, something that's generally more useful, and that's how the Halal Travel Guide started. And since then, alhamdulillah, we've covered destinations varying from Kazan in Russia, Barbados, and then also more local locations in Europe, for example, Bosnia and Turkey. And alhamdulillah, a lot of people have benefited from the use of our guides, and we've been able to make it, I think, a bit easier just for English-speaking Muslims to have that confidence to get out there and try something a bit different.
Absolutely. I think that's, when you say a bit different, I think that's the thing. There is a lot out there. There's a lot to explore, and there's a lot to just really re-engage with that heritage across the world, which is
exactly. And actually, that's one of the key things that we focus on now, which is traveling to seek knowledge, and in a way that it will strengthen your identity as a Muslim. So it's all well and good, for example, to have a nice break for a beach holiday, but there's something more to be said for traveling with the intention to teach yourself about, for example, the history of the Moors in Andalusia, or the story of the struggles of the Bosnians during the war not so long ago. And it's these things that really help develop our identity and our sense of self and sense of community as well.
I just want to touch upon Bosnia, actually, because what you mentioned there about it wasn't so long ago, the war in Bosnia.
Yeah.
it's a tragedy that's sort of gone out of our mindset. And my brother was doing a show just yesterday evening, and he was talking about his trip to Bosnia over the last summer, and how actually it's a beautiful country, absolutely beautiful, stunning country, and it's something that you organise tours. So sometimes a lot of the times people want to go on these types of trips, but they don't know where to start. Not everybody has been raised traveling. They haven't had the good fortune of exploring and have that confidence. And I know that's something that, and I just remember reading on your website, group is it group tours are the new solo travel or something? Misquoting probably. I'm sorry.
Yes. So we found that essentially I travelled to Bosnia a few years ago, and I found the people were so friendly and so welcoming, and as you said, the country is stunning. It's so underrated. I know next to it you've got Croatia, and you've got the likes of Dubrovnik and Split, and they have such good marketing, and people already know about those places, but they don't know so much about where to go to in Bosnia. And to be honest, a lot of people still say, oh, isn't it a war zone? Isn't it still recovering? Is it
Sadly,
safe
yes.
to go?
Well, safe is all the time we hear that question.
Yes.
Is it safe to go to Jeddah? Is it safe to leave your house, people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question, but honestly, it's a shame because the war has long since ended, and they have been in a process for a while now of rebuilding and recovering. And it's one of the safest destinations I can say that I have been to, especially as a female Muslim traveller. Very safe, very welcoming. You don't have any sort of harassment, for example, that you see in some other Muslim-majority countries. And I think that's what draws me to Bosnia so much, is that the locals have a very modest and dignified way of dealing with travellers. They're not there just to make a quick buck off you, but they genuinely want for you to have an enjoyable experience in their country. And that's why we decided to do these group tours, so that we can share this with other people. Because you can do a quick Google search, I think, and plan your own trip. And in fact, we have a travel guide on how to plan your own trip to Bosnia. But what we found is that the benefit is multiplied when you go with Muslims from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and you share this experience together.
That's it. I think that sharing the experience together is quite important. It is a whole different type of travel.
Yes,
in its own right. And your shared experiences, shared memories, and learning about things and learning from each other.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had, alhamdulillah, we've done 3 successful trips now, and you can see on our Facebook page where people have talked about what they took from the trip. And one of the things is always, perhaps they felt a bit apprehensive before about traveling with people that they didn't know, but actually in the end they found that was the best part of the trip, because otherwise you don't really have an opportunity to meet other people, and certainly it can be hard when you get into the routine of work and school to expose yourself to different people, and you know that whoever's coming on this trip is probably quite like-minded, and you leave with a new friend, a new travel buddy.
I'll be honest, I think I'm one of those apprehensive people. People keep saying, we should organise this group thing, we should organise this. And I thought, even last year as well, people said, you should organise this group thing. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not sure.
I mean,
I have to admit, I'll be perfectly honest, I kind of like the space. But equally, I think to myself, I'm very drawn to it. So I think you're pushing me in the right direction, Samir, today.
Alhamdulillah, that's good to know. I mean, to be honest, it's not something that we thought we'd ever do, and we only started doing these trips because people asked us. And we did sort of a big advertising of Bosnia after I went and visited, and I got a lot of content. And people started to say, well, are you doing any trips there? And we said, no, we're not doing trips there.
That's how it starts, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Just one question then. So this one question is, which destinations would you say are surprisingly halal friendly?
I think I would have to go with South Korea. When we went, this was back in 2015, and I know since then it's changed a little, and I'll come on to that in a minute, but we had no idea what to expect. It's a very homogenous country. It's not like the UK, which is quite multicultural. And so we honestly didn't know what to expect. And amazingly, actually, during our 3 weeks there, this is me, my husband, my daughter, and my sister-in-law, we found that we had a really wonderful experience. I went in my hijab and my abaya, and I'm sure they're probably not as exposed to this kind of clothing as we are here in the UK. And we didn't have any negative reactions to our clothing. In fact, we had a lot of curious questions from people, but politely curious. We found that they were very respectful, and they had a lot of the akhlaq, the adab, the manners that you expect from Muslims. And that, for me, is one of the big things that made it quite Muslim-friendly, is that their behavior and the way that they treat each other very well, and they have respect for their elders and that sort of thing, made me realize that actually my own preconceptions may have prevented me from going to a destination that is actually quite Muslim-friendly. And since 2015, actually, there's been a big boom in the halal services that are made available.
In that, yeah.
So many more halal restaurants.
Prayer
You've got more
facilities,
prayer
the airport as well,
facilities,
yeah.
much
And
more
elsewhere.
awareness about what it means to eat halal, for example. So definitely Korea. I'd have to say another place would be Barbados. We were pleasantly surprised to find that there's an indigenous local Muslim community that's been there for over 100 years.
Wow.
And they're very much integrated within the local population. They have excellent relations. They live in harmony. And that, again, was a huge surprise because this is the Caribbean.
Yes.
And Barbados in particular is always advertised as a very specific type of destination for a specific type of traveller, shall we say.
But it's not, actually. I think that's a lot of marketing for a lot of destinations.
Yes.
Is like that because, that kind of sells, so to speak. But there is this untapped, we had this Caribbean friend of my mother's, and it was fascinating to learn that actually, wow, yeah, I'm from the Caribbean.
Yes,
Wow,
yeah.
okay. That's really interesting. So Barbados and South Korea. Now I'm
Yeah.
conscious that you need to shoot off for your next interview. So I'm very, very, I want to thank you for taking some time out to speak with us today, a little bit about what you do.
Thank you very much for having me.
No worries at all. And it is the halaltravelguide.net.
Yes,
That's right.
halaltravelguide.net. We're active on Instagram and Facebook, Halal Travel Guide. And you can find us there and find out more about what we do and travel tips and inspiration. And if you're interested in joining one of our trips, you are most welcome to join, Sister Sharmeen.
There is, well, actually, just before you go, one quick question has come through on the messaging.
Okay.
She said, can I ask, is it women-only tours you're talking about? Do you do women-only tours? Or
We've actually recently introduced our first women-only tour that's taking place this summer holiday. So traditionally we do them mixed so that families can come together. Mm-hmm. But this is, again, by popular demand because so many of our travellers are women. We're doing our first ladies-only trip. It's going to be to Bosnia. The dates are in the last week of July and the first week of August, inshallah.
Yes, I noticed that. Unfortunately, I'm away, so I can't. I'm going somewhere else. My popular destination, I think you know what that one is, yeah?
Inshallah.
But there are other groups which actually do women-only tours. I will try and see if I can line up Sophia Khalid about that.
Yes, okay.
As well. So all the information available on your website. Do follow their Instagram and Facebook pages as well. Samir, Jazakallah khair for your time.
Okay. Jazakallah khair for having me.
Brilliant. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam. Have a good Ramadan.
You too. So that was Somia Hamdi, and she's founder of the halaltravelguide.net. And Halal Travel Guide, as she mentioned, is a platform where information about traveling as Muslims to different destinations, perhaps those the less so that you haven't really thought about, are like Barbados and South Korea and so forth. Women-only travel, is it permissible according to Sharia? I'm not a scholar and I'm really not in the position to discuss that. I'm sorry about that, sister, whoever's text in. Okay, another text. Salam Sharmeen, I'm really enjoying listening to your show. I wonder if Brother Abdul Malik could share a few links where he might be able to get information about where to get more information about Muslim Heritage Britain. But Abdul Malik's part of the interview has ended. We did have Brother Abdul Malik on the show earlier. He runs a website called Halal Tourism Britain. You can contact him through there. The link is on our Facebook page, but if you look up Halal Tourism Britain and drop Abdul Malik a message, he is very, very knowledgeable. As I mentioned before, he is the first fully qualified, professionally qualified Muslim tour guide. So it's not one of these Airbnb people tours which people just like doing some random things on the street. Really, his depth of knowledge is phenomenal. So we've had two brilliant guests today on the show, and we're talking about halal travel. And I wanted to actually move on to one small thing. It's not a small thing, actually, it's quite a major thing. When we're talking about travel, and I would like, because it is a month of Ramadan, people to reflect upon the way in which they travel. And we talked on last Wednesday, about how we can safeguard our planet. It's something that I'm very, very keen about getting that message out. How can we safeguard our planet? But also, when we're talking about travel, there's this element to travel that falls within this as well. Really rethinking the way in which we traveling in a more sustainable way. And in fact, yesterday morning, Brother Zed's show, he was talking about being more ethical, more conscious about what we're eating, the effect on our body, but also the effect on the environment. And just to put a statistic out there, by eating a vegetarian diet, you can reduce the amount of your water footprint, is the amount of water that you're using, by 36%. And that's a statistic I pulled from Friends of the Earth's website. But coming back, making a distinction, what I want to make a distinction about is halal travel and what I call tayyib travel. It's a new term I'm coming up with. I don't know whether it's a legitimate term or not, but I'm sure people correct me if it's not. But tayyib travel, really, what I want people to think about, just to give an example, when we're talking about halal food, which is a discussion which happened yesterday on Brother Zed's show. Halal food, you can have jelly sweets and the halal. But does that make it good for you? Does it make it good for your children? Has it got any nutritional value? And the simple answer is no. And travel, I actually want to pass this analogy onto travel as well. You could take your children or yourself to an all-inclusive resort in Turkey, Morocco, or wherever in the world, and your children could go away thinking that that resort is Turkey, when of course it's not. The only experience of Turkey they might have is the Turkish food in the restaurant. But outside of that, what have you given them in terms of knowledge, in terms of understanding that this is a whole country, it has a heritage, it has a way of life? And that's what, when I'm talking about tayyib travel, that's part of it. But also traveling in a way which is more environmentally friendly, more environmentally conscious. And so with regards to that, I just want to give you an example of one of the things that's happening. There's quite a few of these scenarios actually, but the way in which the impact of social media and so forth can have a negative impact, or people going out to these destinations having a negative impact. So there's a very famous beach in Thailand called the Koh Phi Phi Lay, which was actually ended up being closed down because of the sheer number of people wanting to go there. You've got a bridge in China, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the place because I will get it wrong, no doubt. And after just 13 days of opening, it had to be closed because of the sheer volume of people. And then you've got places like the coral reefs. You know, we went a couple of summers back to Mombasa, and we were looking in one of these glass bottom boats, and the coral reef is just grey and dark, and it actually reminded me of the pictures of the lungs of smokers. Actually, it's one of the things that we studied when I was at university, the lungs of smokers and that dark blackness that fills them. And that's what the coral reef looks like. It looked dead, and it is very, very upsetting. So there's this thing about our impact on the environment. And one of the very sad things that I was reading was about the beaches. And according to National Geographic, 73% of all beach litter is plastic. And you might think to yourself, well, what's the big deal about that? And just go through things like cigarette butts, bottles, bottle caps, food wrappers, grocery bags, polystyrene containers. Okay, so on the beach, it looks bad. No. This stuff that's on the beach is going into our oceans. It's affecting the ocean life. And our oceans are vital for the existence of human life. It's an ecological balance that we're affecting. So if you are going to the beach, take your litter home with you. And on that note, if you are walking along Evington Road and your child finishes a packet of crisps, or you finish whatever you're eating, please don't just chuck it on the road, like the road and the street is a rubbish bin. It's not. Be more conscious about what you're doing in terms of littering this planet. But the other thing about traveling in, or what I'm calling tayyib travel, is the capacity to make our children into global citizens. for them to understand that there is a world out there bigger and larger than the little city that they live in and the school that they go to and the family that they meet. And travel should be about those experiences. And I was reminded when I was preparing for this show, I was reminded of the ayah in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O mankind, indeed we have created you for male and female and made you into peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is all-knowing and acquainted. In Surah 49, verse 39. And this idea that actually if we go out there and we see people in a different way of life, and the Muslims around the world do practice Islam slightly different to the way you might practice in Leicester. They break their fast with different foods. They have slightly different ways of praying. They have different traditions, different ways of dressing. You know, if you go to the UAE, you'll see men in white thobes and women in black abayas. If you go to Morocco, mashallah, it's full of colour. So there is, and then you have I always spot the sisters from Mauritania who have a very specific way of dressing when they come over into Morocco, and the two pieces and the colourful prints. There's so much out there in terms of just that, seeing the world is full of colours, different heritage and different ways of living, and growing ourselves and our children into these, what I like to call the global citizens. And that's part of it, that travel should be more than just sitting on a beach or kids enjoying the kids club, which are all good, alhamdulillah, if we will need a break, but going beyond that and going further on from that, talking about tayyib travel, how to be more sustainable. There's lots of ways we can do that. In fact, I didn't bump into this woman physically, but I was in Asda just yesterday, and there was this English lady, who was asking a gentleman about whether she could take a particular sun cream onto the plane, what's the allowance, and I had to step in. It's just something that I do. I probably should keep my mouth shut sometimes, but it struck up a conversation about how she didn't need to buy those little tiny bottles. She'd save in terms of plastic, she'd save in terms of money, and if she's already got a check-in luggage allowance, she can just pack whatever half-used liquids of her usual shampoo and so forth into the hold, and she'd save a whole lot of money. She'd reduce the impact in terms of plastic pollution. And it's one of these things. The other thing was the confusion around how much liquids you're allowed to go through security and all that. So I went through all of that with her. But the thing is that a lot of people just don't know, or they haven't thought about it, or they just think that you just buy these little plastic containers. Or even when they go to the hotels, and I love for hotels that start changing this, you don't need lots of little plastic containers. That could reduce the plastic pollution by a huge amount. Just that one small step. I'd love to see that. But also thinking about some of the hotels which are now making efforts, so you can try and look for places which are a bit more sustainable. Even the all-inclusive ones, I mean, that's a bit of a sort of dichotomy on that front, because all-inclusive, the whole concept is very much averse to a sustainable way. But there are hotels which are making those choices, and so are airlines. So it is something, if you are concerned about the planet, start thinking about that as well. One of the other things, I just want to give a story about this and how we can, and our children, how they can gain from travel. And the story is about a camel ride. And we went for a camel ride, and the boys and the dad went on the camel. One of my boys, he just didn't want to go. He was terrified of being flung up in the air on this camel. And so I walked beside him, and we talked about the camel ride. We talked about how it was from the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And by the end of it, this little smallest conversation with him, and removing that fear from him, he got on the camel and he rode the camel for the own reason, purely because it was the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's a lot that we can do about making the way in which we travel not just halal, but tayyib. Thinking about how we are impacting the environment, thinking about how we're impacting our mindset, how we're growing as people, what we're contributing back to the community. So important things like buying local foods as well when you're out there, buying from local shops and businesses, helping poor people, because some of these tourist destinations are steeped in poverty actually, and we can do a lot in that regard. Even small things like if you've got clothes in your suitcase, your old clothes, just take them along, give them out there to charity. There's lots of small little things you could do to have a positive impact on the destination that you're going to. I'm coming to the end of the show, and thank you for joining me today. Do tune in tomorrow. We will be talking about mental health because it is Mental Health Week today. My name's Sharmeen. I'm signing off. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.